Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our winter wine immersion. My name is Scarlett, and I'm the communications manager here at ALDI, and I'm thrilled that you're all here with us tonight. I'm even more thrilled to introduce you to Jason Bowyer. He is our wine buying director and resident wine expert, and we are very lucky and very excited to have him with us tonight. So thank you, Jason, and welcome.
Thank you, Scott.
So Jason is responsible for every bottle of wine that comes into an ALDI store, whether that's part of our everyday range, our amazing special buys, or our limited edition wines like the winter range that we're going to taste tonight. So my role is to make sure that all your questions get answered by Jason. So please, we'd love this session to be as interactive as possible. Type any questions you have throughout the wine tasting into the Q&A bar, and I'll make sure to jump back in and get Jason to answer all your burning questions. I'm also tonight have the amazing responsibility of being the fun police. So I need to tell you a couple of things before we get started. Firstly, we're tasting 4 wines out of the 6 in the pack that we sent you. And 4 wines at about a 30 ml pour, which is a tasting pour, is 2 standard drinks. So we want you to have fun, but we definitely want you to drink responsibly. So Jason, talking about drinking responsibly, I feel like we should have a toast to start off. Every good wine taste needs a toast to start. But yeah, make sure you interact and send us all your questions and we'll absolutely get back to you. I'm really thrilled. And thank you very much again, Jason, for your time.
You're welcome, Scarlett.
Cheers.
Cheers. Well, welcome everyone tonight. I'm super excited to be here before you, and we're running into winter, so it's a great time to explore a range of wonderful reds that we're about to release or just released. So before I start, I'm going to just give you a little bit of a teaser on the wines that we're having tonight. Before I then will give you a little bit of background on myself, and obviously give you the opportunity to set up your wine and get ready for us to jump into that first wine. But that little teaser is about what are we tasting tonight. So you would have received in your pack 6 wines. We're going to taste 4 of them tonight. And the first 2, the Vinatero McLaren Vale Grenache and the Eastern Laneway Grampian Shiraz, well, both those wines are small batch wines. They're handmade. They come from producers that, are really trying to express a style and make a different style of wine. So it's, a lot of touch points in making this, these styles of wines. And then we've got 3 icon, what I call icon heritage family wineries in the Seppelt wine, the Wolfblass wine, and also the Taylor's Estate, all from Australia. And the last 2 wines, which we're not going to taste tonight, are all about family wineries as well. So we've got the famous Lurton Hermano Blanco Chilean Cabernet, and we've also got the Taylor's Estate Shiraz, which is a special release wine that they make for ALDI. So why am I telling you this? Well, I said it's a little bit of a teaser. More will be revealed later. What I can tell you is all these wines can be found in ALDI under $15. So let's pour a little bit of the Grenache. I've already done some, but let's get set up for the tasting. And I'm just going to start by telling you a little bit about myself. So I've been in the wine industry for over 25 years. It's been an exciting journey, and I've been very lucky in that journey. I've spent my last 10 years working for ALDI, and it's been a brilliant experience. It's given me the opportunity to explore and discover more of what I love. And meet wonderful people in the wine trade that I hadn't met before. I'm a scholar of the Len Evans tutorial. That's given me some great opportunity to do some show judging around the Australian circuit. And most of all, I'm passionate about value. I started my time in the wine trade selling wines that represented great value. I then went on to selling premium wines and some of the icons like Henschke and Bollinger and Brokenwood. And then I worked in a virtual winery, and then I ended up with working with ALDI for the last 10 years. So today and tonight is all about breaking some perceptions. And I want to talk to you about the reality of value. For those that love their wine, they would probably know that you don't always have to spend a lot of money to find a great value wine. Sometimes you'll spend a little less on a wine and it actually delivers a lot more than the one that you spent $40 or $50 on. So that's what ALDI's all about. ALDI's about offering exceptional, high-quality products at reasonable prices. And sometimes there's a lot of wow factor. That's what I'm aiming for. I want to give you wines that wow, surprise and delight, and offer extreme value. And I want you to be able to take to your friends and say, hey, I want you to try this wine. It's really amazing. I'm not going to tell you where it's from, and then reveal it's an ALDI wine. We all love doing that in the wine trade. It's always a bit of fun. So what are the ALDI myths? I often get asked by people, friends, family, etc., tell me more about the journey, what you're doing with ALDI. People or consumers will say, do you just buy bulk wine and put a label on the bottle and package up as one of your brands? And what I'll show you tonight, that is absolutely, as far as possible, away from the case. We definitely do not do that. We work with really fantastic wineries and winemakers around the country and around the world. Most of them are 5-star James Halliday wineries. They're highly awarded, and they have a real vision and a passion to what we're doing. And we're breaking some ground. So, for example, we work with Alberto Antonini in Italy. He's one of the top 5 wine consultants in the world, and he partnered with ALDI because of that passion. You've heard me talk about our supplier relationships. Well, those relationships come about because there's trust, there's honesty, there's that shared passion. And good winemakers and good wineries wouldn't work with us if they didn't have that. The two go hand in hand. And you've heard that we've won awards. Well, yep, we've won some pretty amazing awards. And I have to say, last year I had some of the most amazing highlights in my career, and we were very fortunate. There's a little bit of luck involved, but you may have heard we won the Max Schubert Trophy last year for Blackstone Paddock Margaret River Cabernet, a wine that we sell for $18. Now, it's not an $18 wine. You're just fortunate enough to buy an $18 wine that trumps many of the best wines in the country in a show. So let's not linger too longer. Make sure you've got a glass of water by you, and you've got your 30 mils or maybe a little bit more, up to you. But make sure you've also got some cheese so you can refresh the palate before we get into the wine. So let's look at this wine. So we have a McLaren Vale Old Vine Grenache under the Vinatero brand. Grenache, what do we know about it? Well, did you know it's one of the world's most planted red varieties? Maybe the dominant red variety around the world. It's widely grown through Spain, France. It's famous in the Rhone Valley, things like Châteauneuf de Pape, an incredibly long cellaring wine. It's grown in the US, South Africa, and Australia. And in Australia, that variety it's got a really colourful history. It was largely used for fortified wines early in the day. And if we go back sort of 20 years ago, Grenache was also known as, was dubbed the poor man's Pinot Noir. And the wine styles that they used to make back then, they used to leave the grapes on the vines for a long time, and they used to make these alcoholic sort of, rich, dense wines. They were a bit dry ready, and they weren't that interesting. And so people probably did have Grenache back in the day, and they probably didn't love it to what it is today. So what's really exciting about today's wine, and we really love this story, and I love this story, is just about 4 years ago, I met with a beautiful family winery in the McLaren Vale, and we were talking Grenache. And I said, hey, I want to make slightly more contemporary Grenache, and I want to make Grenache that's Pinot-esque. So if we look at this wine, it's not a full-bodied red. It's sort of a light to medium-bodied red colour. It's got beautiful brightness and freshness to it. And this is what we're kind of stepping into and working towards with this wine. So what have we done differently? Well, to get the aromatics and the perfume and the lift and that femininity from Grenache, we made the wine with a little bit of whole bunch, carbonic maceration, and then some traditional winemaking. And what you've got in the glass is a very pretty lifted Grenache, but it's got structure, it's got flavour, it's got power. And I get things like baked cherry, raspberry, and I get the structural elements on the palate. So let's have a taste if you haven't already. Delicious. I'm really excited about this wine because last year I thought we'd nailed the wine. It was really kind of pushing the edges. And this wine, we've just sort of given it a little bit more stuffing, but it shows. This wine actually is a great drink now. You can throw it in the fridge for, if it was summer, on a hot summer's day, chill it down and enjoy it. Or you can keep it for, 3 to 5 years. This wine will easily go in the cellar and just get better and better. And today we've got this wine served with a little cheese from Périgord in France, fully imported. And what's unique about this cheese is it comes from the Bergerac region, which is just outside of Bordeaux, if anyone doesn't know where Périgord is. It's incredible value, $5.99. Similar cheeses of this style or of Picot would sell for something like $15 or $16 in the market. But our wonderful cheese buyers found this little gem. And what I love about it, like the wine, it's got some different layers and textures in the cheese. So I hope you're enjoying that and have a look at the wine and maybe ask some questions later on. We're going to move on to the second wine now. So I'd ask that you rinse your glasses, and if you've got multiple glasses, fantastic. If you don't, give it a bit of a rinse, tip it into a little spittoon or something like that. Or if you're drinking it, just be safe. So again, I'm passionate. I love this story about this wine. This wine is again, it's a bit of a journey with this producer. But we've gone from the McLaren Vale, just south of Adelaide, and we've come into Victoria. So we're in Melbourne. We're driving effectively 3 hours, sort of slightly northwest, in a direct line to Adelaide. And we get to the Grampians region, which is part of the Great Western region. So we're going into what's called a slightly cool climate region. I met with this winemaker many years ago on another project that I was working with, and he's now a small producer, makes about, let's say, 3,500, 5,000 cases of wine a year. And he said to me over a glass of wine, he said, you know what, you're passionate about wine, I'm passionate about wine. What do you think about, where's Shiraz going? What do you think the new style is? And we were talking about, things like a little bit of whole bunch in the wine, what's happening in the restaurants, where all the trends are, and those sorts of things. And we thought, okay, how do we push the boundaries here? How do we bring to the consumer what you might pay $30, $40 or $50 for? It's not common in a major retailer. How do we bring something like that to our consumers? So how we approach this wine is the winemaker said, look, I know this great organically farmed vineyard in the Grampians. It'd be perfect for this project. And we take the entire fruit for this wine. The grower gets paid up front for the wine, and the winemaker comes in and starts making this wine, and he's using a variety of techniques. Now, there's the traditional way of making red wine, which is you bring the grapes into the winery and you run it through a destemmer. So you take the little stemmy bits off, and the grapes go in and they get crushed, and they go in a press, and then they go into bins and they start the fermentation process. In this case, we're taking whole bunches like this. We want to get the stems nice and ripe, and we're putting a component of these grapes into the ferment. And why are we doing that? Well, these little stems allow a bit more flow through the fermentation process, and they bring a whole new range of sensory characteristics. So I'm just going to pour it and take you through that. So again, we've got a medium-bodied Shiraz. It's quite vivid and bright in colour. But what you'll notice when you go to the nose is it's got this beautiful, cool pepper spice, aromatically lift, and you see a little bit of that stem on the wine. But this is classy winemaking, hopefully at its best, and it's doing a bloody good job here in the sense that we sell this wine for $12, and this is not the kind of Shiraz that you're going to see at this price point. So it's a small batch, handmade wine. It's got wild yeast in it. So rather than using inoculated yeast, we're using wild. It's the yeast that sits on the actual grapes. We're letting that start the ferment. And then the winemaker's using things like foot plunging and all those little bits. And he's not doing a lot of additives to the wine. He wants the wine to be a full expression of what it is. So when we look at this wine, again, you get that lifted perfume, pepper spice, and then on the palate, you've got structure, you've got length of palate, you've got a little bit of spiciness, but not overt spiciness. You've got this energy and acidity on the wine to allow it to cut through some food, and it's medium body, and it's just delicious drinking. And this wine will just get better and better with a bit of bottle time. It's only recently gone into bottle, so it just needs more time as well to come and improve like any good red wine. So I hope you like the first two wines, and I think we've got Scarlett for a couple of questions.
We do have a few questions. Also, the chat, you can't see, people are really enjoying it. So I'll just give you that feedback. People are saying it's delicious. So happy customers, I think.
Thank you.
But keep your questions coming, guys. So Debbie says that she is a big believer in having a variety of food with whatever wine you like to drink. For example, she's tasting reds obviously tonight, but having chicken pasta. How do you feel about that?
Look, I say with everyone, you eat what you want, drink what you want. It's all personal taste. It's a great question, Debbie, because I forgot to mention on this wine, in talking with the winemaker when we were sitting down, we were saying, right, you might buy your same Shiraz every night and you might be comfortable with that, but that's kind of like having spaghetti every night. Sometimes you want to look for something a little bit more discovery. You know, you might want to throw a bit of truffle or something like that into it to, you know, give it a bit more woo. And that's what we've done with this one as well.
Great. Alex says, you mentioned trends you and the winemakers are seeing. What trends are you seeing in Australia, and do these trends change every season?
It's a great question. We're seeing a couple of big trends. The big trends are lighter and brighter. So we're seeing a trend to more delicate styles of whites, so Pinot Grigio, Sauvignon Blanc, Fiano, Vermentino, away from sort of slightly richer whites. And in red wines, we're seeing a real trend to Grenache and lighter-bodied Shiraz, but also Tempranillo, Gamay, Pinot Noir. They're all the growth varieties. So the Grenache that we had first is growing at plus 50% in the market. It's coming off a small base, but there's real excitement in the wine industry around Grenache. McLaren Vale and the Barossa, you know, they do it really well. The Barossa styles are slightly richer. The McLaren Vale styles are just a little bit more feminine perfume, but still have muscle. You know, lighter Shiraz. We're also seeing trends to kind of naturally reduce alcohol. And consumers also want wines that are organically farmed or organic in process. So you have a wine later on that we don't get to taste, but I hope you get to taste it, which is the Francois Loton Humano Blanco organic Cabernet from Chile.
Right. Jenna wants to know if you would serve any of these wines slightly chilled.
It's a great question, Jenna. I think I mentioned at the beginning, the Grenache, if you're out on a hot summer's day, one of the real discoveries with these sort of lighter, more perfume-style Grenaches is you can throw them in the fridge, put them on the ice bucket and enjoy them outside when you're having a picnic or got friends over. It might be 30 degrees outside, and you can get some wonderful refreshment from the styles.
And I guess last one before we get back into the tasting, What specifically made you choose this range for our winter limited edition?
Well, again, I talked a little bit about, I'm giving you a little teaser, and that will sort of become more apparent. But these are all limited release winter seasonal range. Some are smaller volumes, some are bigger volumes. But you'll see there's a real expression of style. So we're actually going from a lighter Grenache, we're going from a lighter style Shiraz through to slightly heavier styles. But again, still, tapping into being fresh, not heavy, not brooding, and not sort of clunky style wines.
Well, I hope you guys continue to enjoy the tasting, and I will speak to you all in a little bit.
Thanks, Scarlett. Okay, so hopefully you've had the chance to rinse your glass and get ready for the next wine. So we're starting here with the Seppelt's 100-weight Hill Heathcote Shiraz. And I mentioned at the beginning, this is part of the second bracket of wines, and that sort of little teaser and story will become a bit more apparent as we finish. So, Seppelt's. Most people in Australia know Seppelt's. It's a well-known brand in the marketplace, as is Wolfblass. What you may not know about Seppelt's is it was established in the mid-1800s. It has a lot of its heritage in the Great Western. In 1900, it was actually the largest winery in Australia, and it's famous for amazing winemakers like Colin Priest, Ian Mackenzie, and Adam Carnaby. And what's special about that story for me is in the early days of my wine career, I worked with some wonderful people, had some great friends in the industry that's still alive today, and they introduced me to wines like Seppelt's. So my first memory of the Seppelt's brand was a Seppelt's sparkling vintage Shiraz, and that was a 1982 original sparkling Shiraz, and I'd had that at I was about 20 years old, and it was incredible. And I thought, wow, this is amazing to have a sparkling Shiraz with a bit of bottle age and how complex it was. And it really, really was a great wine discovery for me. And that led my passion to the brand, and I discovered things like Shallumbar. And I started buying Shallumbar in the late 90s and the early 2000s, and through the course of vintages. And they were just incredible wines to cellar. They were exceptional value. And so when I joined ALDI, all those memories of those kinds of wines, I thought I've got to do something with the Seppelt's brand. I've got to do something like that emulates that memorable experience and bring it to ALDI. So I got talking with Adam Carnaby at Seppelt's, and I said, look, I want to do something with the brand, and I want to do something that's different. I want to do something that's not available anywhere else in the marketplace. I want to, work with you to put our little touches and your touches on the wine, but I want to be respectful for the heritage of the Seppelt's brand. And it was a really great, wonderful talking point that we had. And he said, right, okay, well, because we want to hit, a price point, we want to step into, achieving some of the high quality features that you want, the value, we're going to go to Heathcote. Now, Heathcote is another, wonderful wine region just about 90 minutes north of Melbourne. And I said, yep, let's have a look at the wines. So we had a look at the wines, and I said, oh, look, I'm just looking for a little bit more of this and a bit more of that. And then we found a beautiful component of Great Western Shiraz. So this wine is 89% Heathcote, and it's 11% Great Western Shiraz. Now, we don't tell you that on the label. You get to see that tonight. No one else knows about this, but this is what the wine's made of. We launched this wine. It's had wonderful press over the years. Everyone loves the value of this wine. It's an icon brand in the Australian wine history, and we're lucky to have it. So let's have a look at it. We're stepping up in colour, and we're staying on that little spectrum of having aromatics and a prettiness to the wine, albeit with a bit more power. So we've got slightly darker colour, but we've still got, richness and those deep reds. And then on the nose, you can smell, some of that earthiness that you get from Heathcote. But it's also got that, plush bomb, that dubiness that comes from Heathcote. And it's that little component from Great Western that gives it that beautiful, cool spice. It settles the wine, it softens it. But what the Great Western component does is it takes the wine from being, bright and juicy, but it gives it a little bit of line and length, and it gives it some real polish. And we really love this blend. And I think you'll appreciate for $13, that is exceptional full climate Shiraz and just wonderful value. So I'm really delighted to be able to bring you that wine tonight. Now that wine, we've got served with the Gouda cheese. Again, mild cheese. It's got a little bit of creaminess to it, so it can support obviously a bit of Shiraz. And then we're going to move on to the next wine, which has got we've got a aged we've got a club cheddar, which is going to cope with the Wolf Blass wine. So again, good time to stop, clean your palate from the cheese, have a little bit of water, refresh, because now we're sort of stepping up a little bit more in terms of weight and power with the Wolf Blass wine. Now again, like the Seppelts wine, this is a great story, and I love the history of Australian wine. I love the history of wines around the world because there's soul and there's people behind them. And Wolf Blass, for many of you would know, is a wonderful brand. It's probably the second best wine brand known in the country, and most people have had it. So Wolf Blass, there's a little bit of a story. Wolfgang, or Wolf Blass, basically came to Australia in the early 1961, and he came to the Barossa. But before he came to the Barossa, his parents said to him, you either stay at school or you go and do a scholarship for 3 years. And Wolfie said, well, I'm a bit of a rogue, I'm going to go and do my scholarship. So he travelled off to Champagne and he did a master's in enology, which is effectively winemaking. And he was the youngest person to achieve that qualification in history. He then jumped on a plane, arrived into the Barossa, and in 1966 he set up Wolf Blass. So there's many, many years of heritage behind this brand, and we're really proud to have a Wolf Blass wine at ALDI that is exclusively made for us, and hopefully it's a little bit unique. So when I met with the winemakers at Wolf Blass, I said, I want to do something with the brand, and I want to do something that no one else is kind of doing. I want to approach it slightly differently, and I want to add a little bit of a contemporary pitch to Wolf Blass. If you remember the wines of the early, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, and the 90s, some of them were, maybe a little bit oaky, and that was like a lot of Australian wines, and winemaking sort of evolved, and we want to keep that evolution alive. So I sat down with the winemakers and said, okay, let's look at the history, let's look at the brand. Now, Wolfie was the master blender, a bit of Shiraz, a bit of Cabernet. He would take from other regions, Barossa. He would do things with the wines that made them quite unique, and we wanted to respect that. So with this wine, we've definitely done that. And I hope you like this wine, because this is not your everyday wine that comes from a big tank. It's far from that. We're way over this side, and we're getting into some real winemaking technique with this wine. So a little bit about it. We've got a Shiraz Cabernet. Now, most people drink straight varieties these days, but some of the best aging wines in Australia were blends like Shiraz Cabernet or Cabernet Shiraz. This wine is 84% Shiraz. It's 16% Cabernet. It's 51% from the McLaren Vale. It's from the Seaview and Clarendon sub-districts. So you can see we're starting to break this wine down to give little features to the wine that's going to make it absolutely delicious in the glass. It's got 32% Barossa, obviously the heritage of Wolf Blass, and then it's got 10% of Adelaide Hills, and it's got 7% of Eden Valley. And in the Barossa, that fruit comes from the Western Ridge up near Seppeltsfield, again, where a lot of the Barossa heritage emulated from. So I'm going to pour that into the glass, and we're going to have a look at this one. Again, what do we want? We want brightness of colour. We want some real energy and perfume and liveliness to the wine, but we don't want to steer too far away from what Wolf Blass was amazing for. You already know what components are going into this wine. It's got some Franchot, it's got a little bit of Americano, but it's got richness. It's got power, but it's got a beautiful white pepper spice to it, which gives it that lovely contemporary flavour. It captures the Adelaide Hills and the Eden Valley, and it just brings that wine to being, a wine that you just want to drink bottles and bottles of. Or it's also a wine that you can buy and sell. This wine will sell easily 10, 15 plus years, like a lot of Wolf Blass wines. So we really hit our objective with the Wolf Blass team. We're delighted. They're delighted. I'm going to have a little glass because I'm talking about it and not drinking it. Wow, powerful, really black fruits. There's some clove, there's some spice, anise. There's layers of flavour in that wine, and they're all suggestive of why that wine will last some time in the bottle, go for the distance, much like the Seppelts wine. So hopefully you've had that with the beautiful club cheddar, because the richness of that cheese will really cope with that wine, and you've got something there that's a little bit different to drink on that. So a little bit about these wines from the cellaring potential as well. We started off with the Grenache, and the Grenache, I would say, is the wine that you drink 3 to 5 years. The Grampian Shiraz is a wine that will get better 3 to 7 years. The Seppelts wine will get better from what's drinking amazingly now, as are all the wines, but they will last in the cellar for 10 plus years. And this wine, 10, maybe 20 years. The benefit of screw cap really assists these wines, as does what we've done in terms of getting that cool climate aspect into the wine's cooler system. Welcome back, Scott.
Got some more Q&As. People are also very excited about the Wolf Blass and the Seppelt in the chat. So Samantha says she loves that a vegan-friendly wine has made the list. And is the trend towards vegan wines a strong movement at the moment? And the second part of her question is ALDI considering bringing in more vegan wines into our range?
Well, absolutely. It's a great question. So the first two wines that we started with are the Vinatero Grenache and the Eastern Laneway Vintners Grampian Shiraz. They're both suitable for vegans. And it is something that we're really working with and working with our partners and our winemakers with on. There are things that you need to do in winemaking, and the technology is moving really quickly to ensure that we can actually make vegan-friendly wines and they deliver the quality that we're looking for.
Brett wants to know, will ALDI ever do a sparkling Shiraz?
Brett, I don't want to say too much because it might take away from the pitch, but we are working on a beautiful sparkling Shiraz for this Christmas. So watch out for some incredible value.
Okay. Alex wants to know, I think you might have just answered this, but how long would you cellar the Shiraz for in particular? And how also, to extend on that, how do you know when to take a wine out of the cellar?
Yeah, it's a great question. So if we look at the Grampian Shiraz, it's a much more pretty perfume style of wine. It's maybe doesn't have the muscle. It's certainly got the flavour and the length of palate. Whereas the Seppelts wine from Heathcote and Great Western has got a bit more muscle and power. So the Grampian Shiraz, 3 to 7 years, maybe more. And the 100 Weight Hill easily 10 years. But one good way to actually learn how long the wine's going to last for is you're looking for initially for structure. So tannin, brightness of fruit, acidity, length of palate, they're all the components that go into making a really good wine. And not to promote, unhealthy drinking or anything like that, Scarlett, but what I would say is if you've got the opportunity to have a little cellar at home, and hopefully you see how good these wines are, buy 6 bottles or 12 or whatever. Put them in the cellar.
ALDI wine director says, buy all the bottles.
Put them in the cellar, have one now, and then go back and look at that wine every so often and to see how it evolves and it changes. They're in screw cap. The screw cap's a perfect seal. And you'll find those wines evolve over time. But what I would say about an older wine is you need to nurture it and treat it a little bit more differently because it's been locked up in the bottle. It needs a little bit of air to bring it to life and give you that beautiful flavour as it gets older. And it's going to change a little bit in colour.
Another question, which of these reds would you pair with venison? Sounds like someone's made venison for dinner, which sounds delicious.
I'm jealous. Look, I think any of these wines would actually go really well with venison. Venison's a richer style meat. It's gamey, but Grenache can have some gamey elements to it. So it could work well. The whole bunch element to the Grand Shiraz would also work well with venison, as would the Seppelt wine and the Wolf Blass wine. No issue there.
Okay. This is an important question. When are these wines available in store?
They're all available now in store. They're all here for a limited time, so some are a little bit more limited than the others. But these small batch wines will probably sell out a lot quicker than the wines that we have here. We've been able to make a lot more of those. But that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with sometimes small winemakers who don't have resource, and we're sometimes dealing with bigger companies that can, offer us a lot more volume.
This is an interesting question from Ashley. Have you found it more challenging to select wines from for the ALDI range due to limited travel options?
Well, certainly COVID has brought with us some complexity to what we do. But that's no different to having bushfires or having a wet vintage or, just in the last week we've had enormous frosts in France that have decimated a lot of France's production. So there are little techniques that we will work with our partners to do in terms of, trying to step outside the square. So we're not narrow in our thinking. We try to adapt. We might go longer on one vintage because we know that we've got a shorter vintage. So we'll look for solutions and we'll look at opportunities for blending as well. So if a wine from a vintage just doesn't give us what we want, we might say, well, we've got that 15% up our sleeve, which is you don't have to declare that 15% of another variety on the label. We can use that maybe to give the wine a bit more lift and length and power and all those sorts of things. All winemakers have got that opportunity, and that's one of the great things about the Australian wine industry. We can do a little bit of blending.
Awesome. So there was actually a question about blending on here. I think in reference to the Wolf Blass, the mixture of regions is interesting. How does it change the taste of each drop, and is this a regular practice in Australian wine?
Look, a lot of big brands, it's a great question. A lot of bigger brands will do a lot of multi-region blend just to get the volume to actually make up for that wine. But that wasn't our tactic when we made this wine. When we looked at this wine, we said, okay, look, consumers love Barossa. They love McLaren Vale. But there's also consumers who are saying, look, I just can't cope with the weight of the Barossa all the time. And we wanted something that was a bit more fragrant, that, had its own personality. And so when you put the Adelaide Hills component and the Eden Valley component, it brings a coolness to the wine. So I think when we were talking about the wine before, you get this fragrance, but you may see just underlying the wine, you get a little bit of light sort of eucalypt not greenness like eucalypt menthol, very subtle into the wine, and that's an expression that often comes from cool climate regions, picked up by the gum trees in the region. So in the Eden Valley and the Adelaide Hills, lots of gum trees around. They're cool climate. The grapes take longer to ripen, and so you get some of those spice, slightly menthol, eucalypt characters in the wines.
Christina says you've done a good job with these cheese pairings, and she wants to know, how do you work out which wines go with which cheeses?
Thank you, Christina. So I suppose, well, the interesting thing about cheese is I just love it. So you just sort of play around with your wines, and I think over time you discover what you like and what goes with certain things, and it makes it all a bit of fun.
Excellent. And then how do you pick the big brands that you work with?
Again, I mentioned at the beginning, we have a lot of suppliers that want to work with ALDI. We're quite selective. We're selective for a reason, that we've only got a limited range of wines. We can't be all things to all people. What's really important is alignment of values. So we want suppliers who have a really shared vision. Now, that's, if they're a big company or a bigger company, that's got to come all the way through the company. If they're a small grower, the buck stops with them. And if they go, yep, we understand what you want to make, it's consultative, it's constructive around it, we're having lots of talks, and we're getting excited about the wine that we're going to bring to our consumers. That's great alignment for us.
I think this is probably a good last question. And this is from Justine. She said, what's your go-to wine at the moment at ALDI? I know each has their own hook, but what are you reaching for more often than not? And she has a little winky face. So you have to pick now.
Well, that's like asking me pick my favourite child, and it's a real tough one. So it depends on what I'm eating. It depends on a number of factors, who I'm eating, the friends that I'm eating with. But I often find through midweek, if I just want to have a glass of wine or something like that, I'll typically go to something. I mean, I just love this Grenache because it's light. It doesn't overwhelm you in alcohol. It's got some freshness and vitality about it. But then, as I go to the weekend, I'm looking for even more complexity and more richness, and I'm probably going out for dinner or something like that. So my wines change.
You can't pick. They're all your favourites.
But there's a little bit of me in all of the wines because, they're just, I love the value and the quality that they bring in. And I really hope that consumers really get a buzz out of that. And look, we get some wonderful feedback at ALDI, from many of our customers saying, how great the wines are. But I love it when they tell their friends, they go to their friends, mate, you've got to try this ALDI wine, like it's incredible. I mean, that's the best. And if they're talking about a $5 wine that we do and they're getting that buzz, that's awesome. They're talking about our cask wine. That's awesome. I'm not here to judge.
Well, talking about great wines, we've obviously tasted these 4, but everybody got 6 wines in their pack, so our 2 special bonus wines should not be forgotten. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the last 2 wines?
I would love to. So, again, a beautiful story. We've got the Humano Blanco limited edition Cabernet from the Central Valleys in Chile. Organic, 91 points from James Suckling. So, I mean, good signature praise of the level of quality you're going to get. $11.99 at ALDI. Chilean Cabernet. No one's really talking about it, but you know what? The Chileans make awesome Cabernet. And the Lurton family are a beautiful family. They've got wineries around the world in Spain, France, Argentina, Chile. They're very progressive. They get what the customer wants. They're super quality focused. We stock a number of their wines, and they have a wonderful partnership with us, and we have a wonderful partnership with them. And then lastly, but not least, is another beautiful family winery, which everyone would know in Australia, and that's Taylor's. So we've been working with tailors for about 5 or 6 years now. And we went to tailors and we said, hey, look, everyone loves your red wine. And we'd like to make a red wine with you. But I don't want to make the same as what you put in Taylor's Estate range. I don't want to make the same wine that you put in Jarraman. I want to make something a little bit different that has a really wonderful signature of Taylor's, but it's different to what you can find in the market. We've been working really hard with them on the wines. We won trophies and gold medals last year with the 2018, and Adam Egan's and I have been on a mission together to really nail this wine, and we did a great job last year, but he's absolutely nailed the 19 in my opinion. I think it's a wonderful wine. It was a really small vintage, 19 crops. The Clare was, drought, various things. Their crop was way down, so we just couldn't get the volume. But this is a Clare Valley Shiraz. It's got some McLaren Vale in it as well, but it's largely Clare. It's more than 85% Clare Valley. And again, we're trying to push a style and drive a style that consumers will love. Everything they'd love in a Taylor's wine, but something a little bit different from ALDI. Because that's what we are. We are a little bit different, and we put our hands up to say that we're a little bit different.
Good different.
Good different. And that wine is a cracker. I'm not saying it's better than any of the others because they're all really good, but it's the best vintage we've done, and I hope you like it.
So we've opened, everybody at home has opened 4 bottles of wine, and as fun police and responsibility captain, I was wondering if we had any tips about how to store this wine so it doesn't go off, because we don't like waste, especially not wasting wine. I feel like that's very bad.
It's a very bad thing. So the best tip I can give you on, 2 tips I can give you on red wine. Just to show you really how good these wines are. You can leave them on your kitchen bench at home, out of the sunlight, out of the heat, in a dark sort of place, and you can look at the wines over the course of the next 3 to 4 days and see how they evolve and change. And that's a really good signature of just how long that they will keep for and last for, and the quality that goes into them. The other thing you can do is put them in the fridge. That will slow down the oxidation process. These wines, all of these wines, will be perfectly fine for at least the next week. Some maybe a little bit longer. So if you want to do the exercise, maybe just take a little 30 mils out every day and just see how long they actually go for, and you will be surprised. There is another little trick that, if you want to extend the mileage of your wine, so often have people over or something like that, and you go, right, I've got a couple of half bottles of wine. I don't know what to do then. Do I tip them down the sink? Well, you know what? If they're quite similar in style, you can just blend the 2 of them together. So we can take a little bit of this Grenache, we can top the wine up, we just fill it up right to the top, then put the cap back on, and that wine will be perfectly good for the next 7 days, maybe the next 2 weeks. So you don't have to worry about the fact that you're pouring it down the sink.
Well, thank you, Jason. I want to thank everybody who's joined our wine immersion tonight. Thank you to all the people who have asked such great questions. If we didn't get to your question, we'll make sure we come back to you guys after the session. But thanks again. Cheers. And we hope you enjoyed it. I certainly have. Thanks again, Jason, for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys.